Hey guys, TC Mabe with TC Gaming. Wanted to give you another video in our Getting Started series. This one's going to deal with melee damage. The previous one we talked a little bit about setting up an archer character and being able to fire different animation montages. This works in a similar way. This product, or this project rather, is in the third-person example, third-person perspective map. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in here the Infinity Blade weapons pack and also the Paragon Greystone character. What I did, the reason I did this, I'll explain real quick here. Paragon Greystone already comes with a set of animations that are set up for doing all your attack combos and everything else in their blueprint. And also it has a set of hit reaction animations that are already in here to show if you got hit from the left or the right or the front or the back, which we'll use to put onto our enemy character to show that that's happened. Now, in order to make our enemy character, all I did is I went into the Paragon character folder, into the, sorry, let's go drill down here, Paragon Greystone folder. Take this off. And we went in here to the Paragon Greystone player character. We right click this and we say Greystone enemy is going to be our duplicate of that. So just right click duplicate, rename to Greystone enemy. In the Greystone enemy blueprint, I went to the mesh and I picked the Greystone tough skeletal mesh for this. You can see in here he looks like that. And in our original Greystone character, or Greystone player character, I just set his mesh to the one for Novaborn. So Greystone Novaborn is in here. And then in our default game mode over here, I switched that to third person player or whatever, third person game mode. And I set our default pawn class to Greystone player character and deleted the mannequin from the front end. So when I hit play, it's going to bring out the Novaborn character. That's who I am. And this is already set up so that if I hit the left mouse button, I swing one time. If I hit the mouse button fast enough 2 times, I swing a combo, and 3 times I'll do a triple combo. Okay? Now, my enemy character over here is just going to stand here. He's not set up to do anything. And as you can see right now, I'm not actually doing any damage to him or anything like that. So we're going to set that part up during this video. I just want to show you where we're at to get this set up. So you should be able to follow along, at least get that general idea on there. Again, these are duplicates and Paragon Greystone with different settings on each one. In our Greystone player character blueprint, we have a section similar to what we showed in our previous video for the archer thing. When you left press the mouse button, it's going to go through this sequence here. Goes out and looks if you have a variable of is attacking, if that's currently set to true. It just says turn on save attack or keep save attack turned on. If that condition's false, it goes down here to the switch on it. Now the first time through, it looks at the attack count. Every time through, it looks at the attack count. Attack count's currently 0. So it goes over into its attack count, 0, goes up this branch, sets the attack counter to 1, goes and plays the end montage associated with whatever's in here. Inside of that montage, in this case attack primary, you have a couple of notifies in here. This notify says the save attack is going to get turned on. And if you have save attack turned on, I'll show you when you go back to this logic, it's just going to help you go into the next attack and increment the counter. If you get to reset combo is going to take the save attack off and reset everything with the variables back to 0. So what that basically means is you have a window between here and here to left click the mouse button. If you left click the mouse button again, it's going to save that variable. So if we go back here and look at the animation blueprint, here's the notifications that are getting called in here. Okay. One is the combo attack save, the other one's the reset combo right underneath of that. When reset combo gets, or combo attack save gets called rather, the save attack condition, which we had up here, was set to true. That save attack condition is on, got flipped on also in the animation notify, was triggered there. Not saved there, but triggered there. So this is what gets us into here. It says this is already true. Now it takes off the save attack and increments. Look, the attack counter was already went up to 1 here when we went down this path. So now it's at 1. It goes down the 1 branch, sets the attack counter to 2 and plays the second montage. And if you have come back through here again during that same loop where you called the combo save attack, you're going to come back down through this branch again, and this time you're set at 2, so you'll go down the third one, so on and so forth. And the play rate of all these, this melee play rate was specified over here in the beginning on setting the play rate for each of these attacks. Okay. If you got to the end where the reset combo was in there, as I said, it's going to reset your attack counter to 0, take off the save attack option, and set up the is attacking at being off as well. So that just essentially resets everything if you haven't hit the mouse button within that window. Okay. Now, to actually do damage in the game, what we're going to look at is we're going to evaluate a couple of things in here. One's going to be a collision with another character object. In order to put those collisions into play, we're going to use a thing called a sphere trace. And our sphere trace is going to happen between two sockets. Now, the reason I brought in uh, the other things for the Infinity Blade weapons is because the Greystone character by default comes with his own weapon. Okay? So in this video here, we're going to draw our traces using his existing sockets that are on the character. But then what we want to do is we want to, in the future video, what we're going to want to do is replace that to actually looking for sockets on the weapon. This way, when we equip different weapons, we can have different sockets in different lengths based on what that weapon actually looks like. Like, for example, a long sword or a great sword or a claymore or something like that would have a longer blade, which would mean that the end of that socket trace should be out a little bit further because you could technically hit something further away. This one here is actually tied to the skeleton. So to see that, if we go in here, we can go and look at our skeleton for this character. Now this is not the Novaborn, so if we go up here, preview mesh, we can just switch this to Novaborn, go to preview scene settings over here, and we should be able to drag this window down, if I can get a hold of that thing there. Drag this window down and set that on the preview mesh, just set apply to asset. I don't know why my mouse is being so particular these days, but I'm going to get that fixed for you real soon. But anyway, we drug this down here and we look on the skeleton tree and we should see on here that he has a weapon socket on here somewhere. So here's his sword top and bottom. You have a sword top and bottom bone on here. Or actually, yeah, these are both bones. Then you have these sockets. One's called Effect Sword top, one's called Effect Sword bottom. And these sockets would be okay. There's no reason we can't use these, but the ones for top and bottom are not necessarily in what I would call the perfect spot. But what we want to do here is we want to go into where the sword is. Now the sword sockets themselves, if you look at the details, these are actually, swing that down a little bit. This socket is actually tied to a bone called sword top. Okay? And that's where that's tied. And then there's an offset to it from there. Whatever position you want. Sword bottom also has its bone. You could tie off of that one. So we could leave these again the way that they are, but I would kind of think that, let's say effect sword top. Let's see if we can move this around a little bit, and if we do, what it does. Probably nothing. It's just a socket location. Okay. So you see it's that little orange line pointing to this here. This is where the thing's tied to. Okay. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to straighten this out a little bit and bring this up to the very tip of this weapon here. And I'm going to hold down the Alt key and move around and just make sure that that's in line with the actual sword. Bring this down a little bit this way just to get it in line so that our trace that we're going to fire is actually coming off of that line. We want that line to be perfectly with the weapon. Now, like I said, in the future video, we would have a weapon that maybe has a longer blade on it, and we want to fix that accordingly. Or I might have a dagger in my hand. The dagger only has a socket trace that's real small. So, when we go to do that, what we'll end up doing is we'll take this sword bottom bone and, we'll set the scale of this thing using code. We're going to set this down to like 0, so that you don't see it ever. Or you could also, I think when you hide the bone, it actually doesn't matter what the scale of it is, right? So we probably don't have to worry about that. But for this here, I'm just going to leave the scales and everything to 1, and we're just going to use these 2 trace names here. Or we could even take this thing where it says sword top. We could duplicate this, so we can go copy selected sockets, and we can come right back here to sword top and just say paste sockets to selected bone. And we can take that duplicate bone there, and I'm just going to call this, we'll call this, this is the end of our trace. Let's call it end. And we'll do another one that is on the sword bottom. And we'll just duplicate, where was the one for sword bottom? We'll duplicate this socket. We'll say copy selected sockets. And we'll do the same thing. We'll go back on here. This sword bottom is tied to the bone called sword bottom. So you go to sword bottom, right click and say paste sockets to selected bone. And this one here, I'm going to call this the start. That's the start of our trace. Now, start and end. I want to move the start up a little bit. Let's go back over here and shift this over a little bit so we can get to that. And we're going to pull the start of our trace. If I can get this left mouse button to work. my mouse has been acting up. I even set the double click mouse speed on this thing to like nothing, and it's still flailing all over the place here. Makes these videos very difficult to shoot, and I may have to call it a night if this doesn't work out. Come back to this. Anyway, there's our start socket. So let's say we're going to trace from here to there. Okay, so start to end. And again, we can just left click and make sure that this is actually on the weapon, and it looks like it's in pretty good shape. So we'll leave that there. Start and end are now the names of our sockets. Very simple. Okay, so what I've done is I've shut the video off. I've waited about a day or so, tried 10 different examples, and I went out and I got a brand new mouse so I could come back here and try and work on this video for you. So real quick, what we did is I added a couple things to this project, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload this to my Google Drive so you can just download it and take a look at it. It'll be infinitely easier. But let me explain to you what we have in here now. Going back to our attack primary, a montage, you'll see in here I put a little section called damage trace. And where this damage trace came from, we added a notify track in here. You can go down and say add notify track. And on this notify track, if you go in and say add notify state, there should be one in here for damage trace handler. And that damage trace handler is something we actually created out here. Let me take you back to the Greystone project folder here. Paragon Greystone. I have a thing called damage trace handler that I created. Now, the way that you make these, if you hover over this, you can see this is an anim notify state, and this will be in the project you can download. Anim notify state, so you can right click on here, and I think if you just go under animation, you could pull them up in here. Anim notify state might be in here somewhere. If not, I think you can just go into new blueprint class and say anim notify, and then look for anim notify state. And that'll create that blueprint for you. Okay. Inside of the anim notify states, I just called my damage trace handler. Inside of here, let's not get too distracted by that. You'll have a couple of override sections in here, and one of them is called I think it's called on tick or something. Receive notify tick, which I already have overridden in here. But what you can do in this receive notify tick event is you can put something like this in there, which I've done for you already. We created that start and end socket on our weapon. So what we're doing in here, just to explain this, is we're going to go in and receive a notify tick. That notify tick fires whenever this animation section hits that damage trace indicator right there. And you'll see it come on. Okay? So what's happening is back here in the damage trace handler, we say we've received a notify tick from the mesh component, which is our world context object. And we're going to create a sphere trace by channel, which is in this case our camera channel. And we're going to take the mesh component and get the socket location of the start socket. And also from that same mesh component, we're going to get the socket location of the end socket. And we're going to put those as our start and end parameters on the sphere trace by channel. And to get those, you just drag these off and you just say get socket location, and you can go in here and grab that and then give it a name, just as I've done here. And then you have to specify a radius, which is the size of that sphere. So if you look at it back here in the montage again, you can see that I just have 15 on there. It's not a real big capsule. But if you wanted, if you're having problems with hits and stuff like that, you could go in here and you crank this up. So, say like 30. You go back and look at it in here, 30 is going to be a much larger capsule. Okay. Not much larger, but a little bit larger anyway. But I'm going to leave mine radius of 15. Seems to work out pretty good for me. And then I just have the draw debug type on here for duration and ignore self. And these are pretty important. And then this is just how long that debug trace is going to be on screen. Normally when you get in there, you probably see this about like that. You hit this little button down here, you can change some parameters in there. But basically what we're doing is we're getting the mesh component socket location of the start and end sockets that we put on our skeleton earlier. We're passing those values into the sphere trace by channel. And we're saying come out of the hit and break the hit result. And to do that, you just come out of here, you drag out. And when you get in this little window here, you should see break hit result. When you do that, it's going to give you a box like this that you can expand, and it's going to give you all these different parameters and things of what's going on, information you can gather from a hit. So what we're going to do is we're going to say coming out of that hit, if we have a blocking hit, if that's true, then we're going to apply point damage, and we're going to apply that point damage to whoever our hit actor is. That's the damaged actor we're going to pass that on to. And I'm also pulling in the location hit from direction for this as well. Okay. Now, that is the end of that return node there, and this is all in the damage trace handler. So to draw these in, again, you go into the montage, wherever you're going to do these, you're going to say add notify state, damage trace handler. This is going to pop up, and you just drag this out for wherever you want it. Now, where you're going to put those is at the start of wherever you want to start trying to see if you're hitting something, and you're going to shut it off at the end of where you're done trying to hit something. So if these are getting kind of weird on you, you can tighten these up a little bit. I've got them a little wide here. You may want to say, well, really, I shouldn't be hitting anything with my sword until about there, or whatever, and you can tighten these up. If this window's too, too small for you to work in, you can always blow this up to give you a little bit more precision to work in there. And then, that socket trace is just going to run through the length of that whole thing. So like if I left it on here, for example, here's a long, long damage trace all the way through there. So you're going to get a lot of hits. Now, the problem is you're going to get a lot of hits. Every time this thing fires, every one of those collision objects is going to come on and tell you that you've hit something. So you want to only leave these on there in the zone of where you want to be able to apply that hit. Okay. Once we have that all set up on here, we're going to do that for each one of our montages. So we did that to montage A. I'll also show you that we did it to montage B. Montage B has a damage trace coming down through here. And again, you can adjust these. And then we'll do another one. I'll show you the one that I did for C. So primary attack montage C has this short little damage trace. Now, this one here, you'll notice one of the things that happens with this is that the playback speed of these anims some of them are a little quicker than others, some of them are a little slower than others. And that gets passed in at the beginning of that Greystone player character blueprint over here where we say set the melee speed of 1.2. What can happen in these traces sometimes is that if you're going too fast, you're going to get less capsules. See that? Because it's gone so quick that it doesn't have a chance to actually draw these. If I go through there slow, it's going to give me a lot of chances to get the hit collision. So if these aren't working out for you the way that you think that they should, you may have to extend this out a little bit so that you're going to get more of a likelihood of getting damage traces, through the sweep of that sword. Like if I put this all the way back here, for example, and turn the trace on a little bit quicker, even though I'm going faster, I still get a lot more collision objects in there. Okay? There's something for you to experiment with if you're finding issues with what you're doing. For this, though, I'm just going to turn this back down a little bit and just let it sweep through about there, and we'll call that, just a little beyond that, we'll call that good. Okay? So now we have all of our traces set up. Well, what does that do for us? Well, what we're going to do in this damage trace handler, again, I had mentioned that when the animation fires this thing, if I put a toggle breakpoint on here, or add breakpoint here, when I go out here to the map and hit play, we'll see that there it's going through the trace right there. That notification, as soon as I hit that left mouse button, came over here and fired this tick trace event or sphere trace event. And it's coming through, and it's now this condition right here was false for every one of these, so it's not going any further. Okay? But if I had hit something, it would come over here to try and apply point damage. Now I'm going to shut this breakpoint off because otherwise this will go crazy. And what we want to do now is we want to just kind of walk through the process of this thing, and I want to quit minimizing my screen. I moved the third person example map up here so it's easier to click around, and I always forget it and try and minimize everything to get to it, and it's right in front of me. So what's going to happen now is you'll see that these traces go by. Okay, and as the traces go by, I hit that character somewhere along that swing plane. Okay, and what we've done is we've added some additional things that are responses inside of that character. Now remember, I'm sending the signal to this animation to say the player character has hit you and you're the hit actor and you're going to take damage from this apply point damage thing. So if we go back out here and we look at our Greystone enemy, which again we made by duplicating the original guy, and I'll show you something else I did inside of this blueprint here real quick. We'll get to that in a second. On start here, on event begin play, I just went in here and said hide bone by name, and I applied the mesh as the target, and then sword underscore bottom is the bone name. And that's that sword that I said if we minimize that later on, we're going to be able to take the weapon out of his hand and use our own weapons in another video. So that's what that's all about. Right now, I just didn't want the enemy character to have any kind of sphere traces going on or anything like that to do damage to our player. So coming in here, we have this event point damage that's going to get fired whenever we got hit. And what we're doing is we're going to go down here to the hit info. And again, you pull this out and you can break the hit result. We break the hit info out and we look at whatever the name of the bone is that we got hit on. So when this damage comes in here, we find out where do we get hit, and we just create a switch on name. So you pull this out and you say switch. Actually, I think it's better off if you pull it this way and you say switch on name. And then you're just going to fill this list out. Now, you could go through here and add pins. You can also just come over here and add them here. Now, these names come from the name of the bones that are on the character. Not all characters have the same bones, but most of the characters that are UE4 compatible have these same names. So what you can do, what I would recommend is you kind of come up with a list of the bones that you want to hit these things on, and just come up with a master list. And you could use this over and over and over again because 95% of the characters that you run across that are UE4 compatible have this same naming convention. But in a nutshell, what we're doing is we're saying if you got hit on the spine 0, 1, 2, 3, or pelvis, we're going to send that hit reaction from the back. Now, if you look at this montage, or not montage, but if you look at this file it's playing, hit react back. Where'd it go? Hit react back is playing that way. And that's so if I'm in behind that character, I want him to kind of lunge forward a little bit. And then if I'm in that same thing here for the Greystone enemy, if he gets hit in the left clavicle, shoulder, arm, or hand, he's playing this hit reaction right. And these seem backwards, you know, when you're talking about him. But see, that's his right side. He's getting hit and he's moving to the left. And then on the same thing, it's the Greystone enemy. If he gets hit on the right side for the clavicle, lower arm, hand, or head, or hand, he's going to move to the left. And then we're doing the same thing with the head or default. Anything else that he gets hit on, we're just going to play a hit react from the front. Now, like I said, that sounds backwards and it might be weird, but here's how it translates over. When I hit this guy, you can see that every time I hit him, he's moving away from the direction of where I hit him. So if I hit him on this left-hand side, he's lunging to the right. If I hit him coming back across from the right-hand side, he lunges to the left. I can hit him back here and he lunges forward. Sometimes you see on the return stroke there, I'm hitting him in the front. So it works out pretty good. You might come up with some other ways to do this, but this is one of the easier ways that I found. And I went through all kinds of stuff. I went through trying to figure out traces between vectors, figuring out forward and right rotation vectors, and getting world rotation and location of hits, and comparing facing directions of characters, and everything I could possibly think of. And I came up with this idea. Initially, my plan was to go through the physics object and say, well, you know, if I hit you on this side or that side, I could do the result. But I noticed in here it had this hit bone name, and when I pulled that out and did a print string off of it, it started showing me all the different bones I was hitting. So I said, well, you know, that'll work out just as good. Turns out also, and I want to give a little credit here real quick. I did a little review of a video a little while ago. Didn't review it like in a formal way, but Angel 4 Has a lot of tutorial videos on here, and one of the things he had recently done was a Witcher combat series. And it didn't occur to me at the time that Witcher Combat, that he actually had a tutorial in here called something about hit reaction by direction and hit by body part. So when I was going through my list, I was like, well, let me go back and double check that again. And when I went back, sure enough, he does a very similar thing in here using the bone names as the triggers for what direction you're going to react in. And like I said, there are a couple of other ways to do it. But if you get a chance, go and check out Angel 4 and his UE4 Witcher Combat series. He actually has a file that you can download. You have to clean it up a little bit to get it to work with these, but just watch the topic. It's pretty good stuff, and his video leads to some other things that might be better for you in the long run. Okay, mine are kind of like getting started, general topic type things. His are a little bit more advanced and detailed. And that guy does stuff with blueprints I've never seen done in my life, and he does a lot of really cool things. So you can learn a lot from his channel. But anyway, we take whatever the bone is, we go here and we just play the animation real quick to tell which way we're being hit. And then I just put a little thing on here to tell us what the animation is so we can see it on screen. And I think that's pretty much all that you need to know about this to understand the workings of it. And if we go back out here to the third person example map, let's collapse this down a little bit and look. I think that's pretty much it. We've got our Infinity Blade weapons, the mannequin, Paragon Greystone, a little bit of starter content. So I think we're in good shape here that I'm just going to distribute this file to you. And the reason I'm going to do that is because in a future video, which I'm not sure when it'll be coming out, just to be perfectly honest with you, like I said, my schedule has changed and I don't do these this isn't my income. This is a hobby for me. So, I got other things that have a little bit higher priority for these, unfortunately. But in the meantime, check out Angel 4, check out your Ryan Laley's, check out your Virtus Learning Hubs, and check out your Ruben Wards and all those guys. They do the same stuff, but they have a lot more video content already out there for you. If you have questions about some of their videos, I might be able to help you answer them in my Discord if I'm not getting videos out quick enough for you. But I'm gonna upload this project and I'll leave the link in the description of this video. The reason I put the Infinity Blade weapons in here again is because eventually we're going to come back and we're going to replace these default weapons that are on the characters, and then we'll set up our sockets on each individual weapon. And then we can also work through some other things where we might switch how we're doing certain things based on the type of weapon that we're hitting somebody with. An example might be if you're hitting somebody with a dagger, you're probably not going to have the same type of hit reaction you would as if you cleaved them with a greatsword. So I don't know how far down the road we'll get into that, and there are other ways to do that are a lot more simplistic, already done for you. I use ACF, Ascent Combat Framework, quite a bit. And all of these things that we're talking about in here are very simple in ACF. Now, I'm not suggesting that you run out and spend, a couple $100 doing ACF at this point, unless you're ready to move on to something a little bit more advanced than what you've been dealing with in the other marketplace content. I don't make any money from endorsing that. It's not, this isn't a paid thing. I'm just saying, in my experience, these things are already taken care of in some of the more robust plugins. Probably the same thing in any of the other things that you can use for combat damage. I know the guy that did the dynamic combat system also has a simple plugin for maybe, I don't know, 10, 15, 20, $30, something like that, that is just his combat pieces that do the sphere traces and determine things probably like hit direction and point damage direction and things like that. So you can do a lot of this stuff on your own for sure, just like anything else. I mean, the tools just make the job quicker and easier. But you'll notice I haven't been pushing anybody in the direction of trying to get ACF. I haven't been doing videos that promote doing that because I know it's a very costly thing, and the learning curve's a little steep right now. The documentation is getting better. The examples are getting better. But I'm going to upload this for you. Try and get you another video out soon. Again, we'll come back to this with the Infinity Blade weapons, and then eventually we'll do something with melee or with projectile damage, which again, Ryan Laley already has videos out there. I would recommend checking them out. If you get confused, buy any of that, come ask questions. I'll try and get videos out for you as soon as I can. Thanks again for watching, guys. My name's TC Mabe with TC Gaming, and you guys stay safe and have a great day. Thanks for watching.